Hey everyone, finished watching the kind of sort of next episode or third movie, Power Rangers Clash of the Red Rangers, the movie. The first movie since the 90s, kinda. It's a TV movie made like episodes of the show, utilizing Sentai footage mixed with newly shot stuff. The only difference is that most of the footage here is from the Shinkenger movies. This has been done in Power Rangers before, but never presented as a separate special before. We get an opening narration broadly explaining RPM's premise. At the time this came out, I didn't think much of this, but now, knowing that nearly every season to follow will include opening narration segments, it's kinda like if RPM was made in the Nickelodeon era. Scott is alone in the Megazord, battling an attack bot, Professor Cog. They face off in a Western-style duel. Scott appears to win, but then Professor Cog rises and blasts Scott down. He reveals he was wearing a shield. Professor Cog laughs and mocks Scott, telling him he'll destroy 2 worlds. We then get the theme song with almost all new accompanying visuals for the movie. This is pretty cool and something that wouldn't be done again for some reason. After the theme, we see an empty train station. Suddenly, Professor Cog, along with a bunch of grinders, step off the train. He mutters to himself that he wants to find Master Xandrid. In the city, the Samurai Rangers are battling a Nylok Sharkjaw. Professor Cog watches and plans to follow Sharkjaw to Xandrid. In the Netherworld, Xandrid informs Sharkjaw of his latest plan. He has an army of Moogers led by a new Nylok, General Gut. Professor Cog enters the Netherworld and demands Xandrid allow him to take his Sanzu River water. In exchange, he offers to defeat the Rangers. Back at the empty train station, we see one more being dismount the train, someone with red boots. The Samurai Rangers are celebrating their latest victory, even though Sharkjaw just retreated. They didn't destroy him.
Good is dumb.
They see grinders. They jump into battle, but they're too tough for their weapons. Out of nowhere, a new ranger appears. It's the Red RPM Ranger. He easily takes out the grinders, and the Samurai Rangers don't know what to think about him. Scott introduces himself to the team. Jaden asks him to take his helmet off, but Scott refuses, saying he has his reasons. Mia and Emily accept him, the others aren't so sure. They take Scott to the Shiba house. He takes interest in G's motorcycle. They show him around, and he's bemused by how old school they are. The Rangers once again ask if he can demorph, but he says he isn't sure if he can breathe the air in this dimension.
My eyeballs could have been sucked from their sockets.
Master Xandrid sends a Nylok, Sergeant Tread, out to assist Professor Cog. Some grinders are about to ambush Antonio, but he hears and fights back. The gap sensor goes off while the team looks over the map. Scott steals G's bike.
He took my bike.
Scott finds Antonio and helps him take out the bad guys. Professor Cog shows up and Scott battles him. The samurai team arrive to help. Professor Cog is too tough and he shoots Scott with Hypno bolts. Scott proclaims he'll never stop fighting and Jaden begins to trust him. Professor Cog opens a portal and tries to send Jaden through it. Scott jumps in to block it, but so do the other Rangers. They get sucked in. Jaden and Scott are thrown back into the water. Sergeant Tread appears. Professor Cog tells him that the Hypno bolts will cause Scott to turn on Jaden. Elsewhere, Jaden and Scott talk. Scott assures Jaden that if the Samurai Rangers are in his world, the RPM team will help them. In the Netherworld, General Gut prepares for battle, and Professor Cog collects Sanzu River water. At the Shiba house, Jaden and Scott arrive and appear to be affected by the Hypno bolts. The next day, the two seem to be getting along fine. Jaden symbol powers himself up a horse, and Scott once again swipes G's motorcycle.
Not again.
They race to the battleground, and this is a really cool sequence. Scott is perplexed when he finds that Jaden beat him. Scott announces that his battle is his alone and threatens Jaden. They begin to fight each other, and it looks like they're evenly matched. Scott fires at Jaden, and Jaden launches his sword at Scott. At first, it looks like they're done for, but they then reveal they were both wearing shields under their suits. Jaden reveals Mentor G found a symbol power spell to undo the effect of the Hypno bolts. The villains are through watching and attack. Some grinders turn into motorcycles, and the Moogers ride them into battle. One grinder doesn't transform, but a Mooger rides him anyway. Sure. Jaden symbol powers up a convertible. He and Scott ride it through the villains until only Sergeant Tread is left. Scott gives Jaden his blaster and he fires at Tread. Professor Cog confronts them and Jaden gives Scott a power disc, the Shark Attack mode. They both power up and almost defeat him. From overhead, a portal opens and the Samurai Rangers return. The RPM Rangers help them, like Scott said. They say hi.
That's stupid.
Now altogether, they have the power to destroy Sergeant Tread and Professor Cog. They turn around and see General Gut's army approaching. The Rangers ride into battle on horseback, except Antonio and Scott, who use the convertible. Jaden reaches General Gut. Meanwhile, the magic convertible somehow breaks down. Sure, Jaden uses the Shark Attack disc himself. With it and the Shark Zord, he destroys General Gut. General Gut returns giant and the team summon the Megazord. They attack Gut and he reveals a second form. Jaden sends out the Shark Zord. With it, they destroy General Gut for good. Back at the train station, the Rangers say goodbye to Scott. We end on Mike about to punch Emily in the head. I really like this thing. It's got some flaws for sure, but it's also got a lot of what I like most about Power Rangers. One thing that kind of shocks me is with how much care they went into recreating the world of RPM. Considering what little care would be taken in the following seasons depicting Corinth, I'm even more impressed. I'd never seen Shinkenger vs. Gowanger and always heard this opening was shot for Power Rangers. It wasn't. We just got really lucky that Japan just happened to create a set that matched RPM. Or maybe they'd seen some of RPM and were inspired. Eka Darville reprises his role of Scott, though due to legal nonsense, he's credited under a different name. RPM never got a full team-up or return, only little cameos here and there. Of all the character returns, I actually like this one the best. Some fans have criticized this special for Scott being out of character. I don't know, for the most part, I thought he was fine. He's in a completely different world. I felt it made sense for him to react differently to it than he would his world. His team is all about technology, the Samurai team is all about old-timey tradition and magic. I would have loved to see the rest of the RPM Rangers together, but considering behind-the-scenes complications from not only switching companies, but switching networks as well, I understand. I do wonder why actors already in New Zealand weren't considered. Maybe they were considered, but there were budgetary issues or some other boring thing. Only Scott returning I can accept, but this special just had to tease us with what we weren't going to see. I think at least seeing Dr. K helping the Rangers open a portal would have been enough, but we don't get even that. We don't see anything of Corinth. Emily says your team says hi, and that's it. I would have preferred this line not be here at all. It feels like someone behind the scenes thought this was a good enough reference to just pass by the RPM team. One odd thing with this special is its odd placement in time. For RPM, it's taking place at some point before the end, since Scott is piloting the Ultrazord, or whatever it's called. This is similar to SPD's team-up Wormhole, where SPD went back in time to the latter half of Dino Thunder. For Samurai, it's taking place in between episodes 4 and 5 of Super Samurai. For whatever bizarre reason, Nickelodeon aired this during the first season's run before several elements and characters were introduced. DVD releases, as far as I know, have never placed it in its correct continuity order, also similar to SPD's Wormhole. Professor Cog is unique to this special and not actually from RPM, but he does fit right in with the bad guys of that season. I know he comes back in Super Mega Force, and I'm curious, will his voice change? That was a weird thing with RPM main villains. There's quite a few monsters in this special. First up for the non-RPM ones is Sharkjaw. I've always liked this guy's voice, and he's pretty fun. Unfortunately, he disappears. He shows up, leaves, and never appears again. Maybe he's still out there somewhere. He was voiced by Dean Young. He'll go on to play a few more characters in Samurai and Megaforce. General Gut is the main villain of the special, which is kinda weird after Professor Cog. I think Professor Cog should have had more of a hand in the final battle. General Gut works fine, but he has no relevance to the overall story. He's just the monster leading the Moogers. One cool thing with him, he starts out looking fat, but then he reveals a second form with a snake coming out of his stomach. Weird. General Gut was voiced by John Dibvig. He's had a ton of roles over his career, but only one other role in Power Rangers. Professor Cog was voiced by Cameron Rhodes. He voiced a few monsters previously, most notably Matumbo and Mystic Force. He'll return as Professor Cog again in Super Megaforce. Sergeant Tread is the last new monster and the least interesting. His wheel arms are neat and allow him to battle in a creative way, but he's not treated like that big of a threat. Sergeant Tread was voiced by Jeff Dolan, who previously voiced Korag in Mystic Force and would later voice Gosei in Megaforce. Steven Skyler wasn't available to play Antonio, so he was played by a stand-in and voiced by Jeremy Birchall. Next up, all the new powers. Because this episode aired earlier than intended, the super mode shows up here before it's actually unlocked. Only Jaden uses it. The Shark Attack disc is said by Jaden to be one-time use, and I was worried for a minute that this would be like the 24-hour morpher from SPD. It turns out Jaden meant Scott would probably only get to use it once before returning to his dimension. In addition to a red version of the Super Mode is the Shark Zord, or maybe it's the Shark Sword, since it takes the Rangers a while to think of using it as a Zord. The Magic Train Station is pretty weird. It never gets any explanation. Why is it the bridge between dimensions? How do the bad guys or Scott know about it, and how does it work? It's some surreal imagery that wouldn't feel out of place in a Sentai movie. Here, though, there's usually some attempt to explain how everything works. I watched both Shinkenger movies for the first time. The first one, The Fateful War, is mostly used here for fight footage. No story elements are kept. There's some weird stuff in the movie, like the villains having established bases in our world. In the show, they're restricted to their own dimension. This is one of those movies that's astonishingly short. At barely 20 minutes, it's shorter than the average episode. The Gold Ranger is kept out of the action by Fuwa Juzo, and then by his origami mechs being damaged. I'm guessing he originally wasn't intended to be in the movie at all, and was added after it was nearly complete. The Gold Ranger gets sidelined in both series, Sentai and Power Rangers. The second movie, Shinkenger vs. Go-Wanger, is a more typical length at over an hour. Most of Clash's plot came from this, with Fateful War just filling in cracks. The movie is set after Go-Wanger ended and during Shinkenger. Sosuke, the Red Ranger of Go-Wanger, demorphs almost immediately after his first meeting with the Shinkengers. The mentor of the team, a little robot Bomper, accompanies Sosuke to the Shiba house. The equivalent over here would be Dr. K coming with Scott. The conflict between the Red Rangers of both teams is uniquely based in Japanese cultural concepts that wouldn't translate over here. A bit that wasn't kept over here is the defeated villains of Go-Wanger for some reason coming to Genta's sushi cart. We probably could have had Crunch and Shifter at Antonio's, but unfortunately his actor not being available probably nullified that possibility. It's too bad, I liked them, and this would have been a neat moment. The train station has an unusual origin. It's inspired by a magic train that leads from a Christmas-themed world back to Earth. That's definitely more out there than I expected. The Rangers of both teams get sent to alternate worlds and unite to battle the bad guys together. Similar to the Samurai team getting sent to RPM's dimension, but we actually get to see it. If Clash was movie length, maybe we could have seen something more like that. The Go-Sagers make a cameo, and I'm surprised Saban never used this footage. As much as they milked Go-Sager for fight footage, they shockingly left out a lot they could have utilized. This was already paid for, after all. Also unused was footage of the two main villains growing and fighting the Megazord, probably just cut for time. There was quite a bit in the Shinkenger movies that dragged, and this special keeps a much quicker pace. So there's the first real special since Lost Galaxy's Lost Episode. The next special wouldn't be all that special, just an extended cut of Super Megaforce's legendary battle that somehow doesn't even use everything it even had. After that, an extended cut of Ninja Steel's Dimensions in Danger was apparently planned, but never aired. And then there's Once and Always, a 30th anniversary special that goes far out of its way to ignore most of the 30 years it's supposedly celebrating. Clash is a unique entry for Power Rangers. It's the only special that's actually relevant to its corresponding season and isn't just an extended episode or a behind the scenes. It's the first team-up for the Neo-Saban/Nickelodeon era, and the first thing to establish RPM to be in a separate dimension. It also establishes the Disney era as having happened, but we don't know yet to what extent. It's probably my favorite thing to come out of Samurai so far. The original stuff is all visually impressive, and the editing of Shinkenger footage is handled well. I'd have liked if this had started a tradition of team-up specials. It may have gone smoother in the future, since all the following seasons have much more overlap in cast and crew. If Megaforce had a team-up with Samurai, would the whole team return? Who would the villains be? So there's Clash of the Red Rangers. It's got some massive flaws, but I enjoyed it a lot. As ever, this one, hope you enjoyed it. See ya in Super Samurai.
Boom! Headshot!